live from the Matrix. Because why? Well, we're talking about machine learning and data. And we have fun here on VCTV, but in all seriousness, we've got an exciting show for you. We've brought some great guests from around the world to talk to us about what's happening around data. What happens when you apply data and use technology to do something with it? We're talking about machine learning, we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're talking about the power that data has for all of us. A ton to talk about around this episode. And again, we've brought some of the best to share that with us today. And to you, our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, make sure you click subscribe. But in all seriousness, we've got an exciting show for you. We've brought some so we've got someone who's got their camera on, or their mics on. If we could go on mute, everybody. Apply data and use technology to do something with it. We're talking about machine learning. All right, so we're going to continue on, but we do have some feedback, so apologies to our audience on that. So if everyone, all of our guests, Emmanuel, if you could go on mute as well. Share that with us today. And to you, our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, make sure you click subscribe. But in all seriousness, we've got an exciting show. So we've got there we go. All right. Sorry, guys, everyone. We had a little technical difficulties there. Now, again, to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you hear, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to be on a show like today, do reach out. We'd love to find the right episode, right technology, right industry or region for you to talk about as well. And entrepreneurs, this is a great opportunity for you to get up on our virtual stage, pitch us as investors, get real-time feedback from each and every one of us on your company, on your product, on your service that you are out there fundraising for, along with our entire live audience. Do reach out to the LATOKEN team and or myself, and we'll find the right spot for you. And with that, coming to you live from the Matrix, let's dive in, introducing every one of our guests. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we're going to be talking again about machine learning and data. What is happening in these industries? What's happening with these technologies? What is happening as our worlds become more data-driven, leading our decisions to that of data and no longer to thought, as Luis and I talked a little bit about earlier in the week and also last week as well. But with that, let's go ahead and introduce everybody. Luis, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you, my friend. If you can, a little intro and a little background.
Yeah, I'm kind of lost in your matrix, trying to figure it out, trying to get out of it. All right, just to give a little the skinny on me, I've been involved in finance for over a quarter century, investment banking, private equity, some venture deals. I've been involved in technology forever. We're doing some great things in AI, VR and collaboration platforms. And, we're looking at other opportunities in other areas, because the future is bright. Everything has sped up. So it's time to step up and do a little more out there. But I'm going to pass it over to the other people on the panel so that they can have a little more time.
Wonderful. Elfish, my man, who's got an internet connection like I do at the moment. So we're stable, we're good in these exciting times. If you can, a little intro, a little background. A pleasure to see you, my friend.
I'm not in San Francisco, man. I'm in London. We have more reliability here than you do in San Francisco at the moment, obviously.
Apparently.
All that global warming. So I'm Alpesh Doshi. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I've worked in technology for over 20 years. I've worked in data for 15 years, helping companies with their data platforms. And obviously AI is out there in the media. The reality of actually AI being used is pretty early, to be honest. So, we're building ventures to make that easy, to make companies, help companies not have to worry about core infrastructure and enable them to do proper AI and embed it into their business.
Awesome, and welcome back. We're going to talk a lot more about that today and what that means. And Alessandro, welcome to the show as well. It's a pleasure to have you back. Looks like you've got a gorgeous background there. I'm assuming that's exactly what you're looking at behind you. But if you can, a little intro, a little background on yourself as well, please.
It helps if I take it off mute. Yeah, I wish I was there. This background is actually Maine, where I was for a couple of weeks before Labor Day. It was really beautiful. My background is I've spent my whole career in technology as a software developer at the beginning. I'm an engineer by training, and then as a entrepreneur, as an executive in tech companies, and finally as a venture capitalist, where I spent more than about 25 years basically doing venture capital. For the past 3 years, I've sort of gone off on my own and making my own investments, and I've actually recently stepped into another operating position in a startup. So I'm the president of a company called Epistemic AI, and what they do is, what we do is a AI platform for biomedical research. And I'm sure I'll get a chance to talk about the how they can impact things using AI. And but that's what I'm doing right now.
Wonderful. Welcome, gentlemen, back to the show. It's a pleasure to have each and every one of you. I know we've had each of you on VCTV here talking about a number of subjects, but specifically a little bit about today's subject. And so I want to dive right in and hear the latest from each of you of what you're seeing happening in these areas of data and machine learning. A lot has changed in the past week. In some cases, the last 24 hours around this. So let's start off with your current take, and then we'll dive into each of your areas respectively. So Elfish, let's kick it off with you. What are you seeing as the current state of things from your view right now around data and machine learning?
Well, I think there's still definitely interest. There's hype. People want to do this. People want to leverage AI across their businesses. So there's definitely momentum. There's definitely money. The fact that digital transformation and COVID is basically now driving and accelerating that change. So if we take machine learning and data in the context of what's happened in the last 6 months, and then the context of digital transformation and companies saying, how do we transform our business model to be digital? You know, data is even more important, and machine learning is even more important. So what we're seeing is an acceleration of the use of this. Without COVID, I think it would have taken significantly longer. With COVID, everybody's digitizing their business or thinking about how they're going to do it. So, hey, it's fantastic time for startups and scale-ups around this market in every sector.
Absolutely. I think it was McKinsey that has a commercial running almost constantly for those who are watching television and even on streaming platforms as well, saying that the digitization of today's world in 8 weeks reflects that of 5 years, to Elfish's point as well. So we're seeing, whether that's true or not, let's just go with it. But in a few months, we saw the digitization and the rapid acceleration of technology being integrated or shifted and changed that would normally have taken 5+ years to happen. So to Elfish's point, this is something that's speeding through like a bullet train through organizations today. And what that means, we're going to continue to get into as well, but it's definitely something to be paying attention to, whether you're looking at the picks and shovels or you're looking at the new applications that are coming out. Lewis, to you, what are you seeing as the current state?
Well, you guys are on point with what's happening. Everything's happening rapid fire, going. You know, artificial intelligence, there are a lot of aspects to it. You know, we're talking about machine learning and data. Machine learning is a part of AI. Okay, data is an important part of machine learning because without the data, the machine can't learn. It can't go and start, teaching itself how to advertise to you, how your habits. We utilize this now, and we see it. We just don't realize it. Look at Google, look at Walmart, look at Amazon, look at Facebook. How is it that they know how to advertise to you? How do they? Okay, they're utilizing their AI platforms, they're utilizing machine learning, and big data. To me, it's always one of those things that you have to look at the privacy and security. That's always a concern. But without this, machine learning can't learn. So how do you advance? That's going to be the tricky part. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in these areas for some smart entrepreneurs that are looking to take advantage of it.
And you're absolutely right. Privacy. Alessandro, I want to hear your thoughts, and then we're coming around about privacy, because that's probably one of the biggest issues around data that we don't talk about right now. And we will here in just a minute. So Alessandro, to you, current states, how are you seeing things?
Well, I think artificial intelligence is a key technology. It's a technology that's affecting every industry, and it will keep affecting every industry. The more data we have available to us, the more it's necessary to make sense of it, to sort of be able to sort through it and draw connections and learn from it. So all the disciplines in artificial intelligence are called upon to be able to do all these things. And in addition, there is a lot more that can be done. So right now, there is also a lot of advances in terms of technology itself, from specialized chips for AI to quantum computing. And those type of technologies would take this a notch up, take it to a totally different level. So we'll be able to do things with AI in the future that are not even imaginable today.
And what are some of those things? I mean, just curious. I mean, you're working in the field of bio right now. I mean, this is something that you're probably focused on pretty heavily. What are some of those examples of what we're going to be able to do that we can never imagine today?
Well, you know, one of the things. Let me take the example of bio, right? For instance, well, let me take another example first, which is it's happening today. Okay, in the area of robotics, right? Robotics are sort of machines that are used to do certain functions that historically they've been around for a long time. You know, in manufacturing, for instance, and you will program them in a certain way, and then if you had to do something different, to reprogram in a different way, and they will do very specific function, very specific functions. And today you have companies like Vicarious, for instance, which has a robotics platform that allows a robot to learn. Okay, so they figure out by themselves what needs to be done. Okay, so this is sort of it's done today, but it's imagine when with more computing power, more intelligence, what can happen in the future. In my case, looking at the medical industry today, I mean, what we're focusing on is really trying to draw connections among disparate sets of data and databases, and using natural language processing to understand a lot of content, because biomedicine is one of the most content and data intensive industries that exist. And so today, a research scientist or even a doctor can actually use platforms like ours to figure out, to help them get to a conclusion. So iterative process of research, finding things, and then you find other things that you didn't know about. Tomorrow, with more computing power and more intelligence, we'll be able to, the doctor will have an assistant that will actually be able to diagnose patients. Because what's happening today is that doctors are very specialized, right? So whenever there is something that's a little peculiar or rare or something they've never seen before, it's really hard to understand what's going on. And what they do is they put together these panels in the hospital among clinicians, where they sort of interact among each other, among humans, like live, and everybody brings their expertise to the table to try to figure out this particular problem. And the reason is that because today we are very, very specialized. Doctors are very, very specialized. So they know one area very, very well. But if you go beyond that, if you have to look at the effects of maybe other parts of the body or other situations, you don't know. So imagine being able to have someone that has all the body of knowledge, be able to draw connections and help you really figure out what's happening, because they can draw from other parts of knowledge that you have no access to. And we're solving it today through our platform, for instance, in an interactive fashion between let's say the researcher, the doctor, and the system, so we can go back and forth and iterate. Tomorrow, the system will be able to do it by themselves. They'll be able to actually figure it out because they can bring everything to bear.
I mean, this is one of the areas I think is exciting, is exciting from a standpoint of what we're thinking about, and it's not very much talked about yet. But you're absolutely spot on. I mean, with all of that data, what we can do as things, computing power, for instance, gets faster. It's getting faster by the second. We're looking at things like distributed computing in general. We've got quantum computing, which we're going to be talking about here on VCTV very soon. That changes the game from a genomics and from a biomedical perspective more than we can even imagine right now, to your point, Alessandro. I'm super excited about that. But I'll hold back because we could nerd out about it too for for too long. So Lewis and Elvish, I want to come to you both around data and privacy. So you both are focused on the areas of artificial intelligence. AI, while great, there's still a lot of training that needs to be done. So let's focus on training first. Where are we with artificial intelligence as it comes to data? Is there enough data to power AI to be effective, or are we still in the early innings of this? We've got a lot more work to do. And
So,
Lewis, we'll start with you, or Elfish. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
Elpish, go right
yeah.
ahead.
I mean, to be honest, there's large volumes of data. It's not a general question. Each industry has data. Almost every industry has sufficient data. The question is, number one, is it organized? Is it high quality? Is it available more easily to be able to do something with? And obviously, does it apply to the kind of use cases and problems you're trying to solve with the data? Things like data privacy, you mentioned GDPR and data privacy. Data privacy is a big issue, but obviously it's around personal data. The personal data stuff, look, we know what Google and Facebook and the other guys are doing with your personal data, right? I mean, they have been using your personal data for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? So it's not, yes, there is enough data, right? Is there enough data that you're trying to apply it for a particular use case? We don't know. Alessandro mentioned healthcare. In healthcare, in some areas there's huge amounts of data, and others there isn't, right? So I don't think it's a black and white question. The other thing is there are actually startups creating synthetic data to train models. So what they're doing is they're coming up and saying, you know what, you need data set for this. We'll come up with realistic synthetic data, which is feed your models to train your models. So I've come across 2 startups doing that exact thing. And one of them actually sent email today, and one of them, they've done work for Microsoft and Amazon and a bunch of other companies. So, these large organizations are buying this synthetic data to actually train their models. So, it's actually quite a diverse landscape, and obviously synthetic data is one of those ways you can create the data that you need to train your models.
Absolutely. It's synthetic data, by the way, audience, if you haven't heard this term before here on VCTV or in general, it's definitely something to start looking into, and we'll come back to it in just a minute. But it is a powerful, powerful tool that's just now being realized on a little bit more of a mass scale. So Elvish, thank you so much for mentioning that. Lewis, to you, same question.
Well, I'm going to echo what was just said. You have a lot of data out there. Forget about the personal stuff. You have a lot of data to do a lot of different things. The problem is that, the quality and how are you going to utilize it? I think that, is there ever enough data? Probably not. I think that the accumulation of data is going to escalate as 5G becomes more widespread. I keep mentioning this. You go from a 2-lane street to a 10-lane highway, data is going to be flowing like crazy. So that means that you have people that are utilizing this data to create things. They're going to have more access. You'll have companies gathering more data, and they're going to get smarter, and they're going to know how to compartmentalize it so that they know what the data is for. What are they going to utilize it for? If you just grab data and just putting it in a box, what is it going to do for you? You don't know. So if they can organize it better, I think there's going to be more use cases out there. I think that there are going to be more things happening. I think we're going to have a lot more progress and a lot more advancements in technology and beyond in medicine. As Alessandro said, as far as biomedical medicine, stuff like that, you're going to have a lot more advances going on. Again, how they use the data, we'll find out about that. I think that's going to, the privacy and security. I mean, the security of the data is important. It's not just about personal, it's the security of the data. You don't want something to happen. So I think that's going to be something that has to be tackled.
Well, and not just the security of it, but also the type of data, the quality of data, right? So we've talked about how some data is skewed. So we look back at the past, 9 months of 2020 as an example. A ton of data. I'm zooming in on the camera here. I'm coming out of the matrix. There's so much data that has been generated in this short amount of time here in 2020 alone. But as a previous speaker has mentioned here on VCTV, that data is skewed because not everybody has had the same opportunity or access to different technologies and products. So the data, while gathered, great, it's also a little bit skewed. So how will that maybe play a role in it? Is synthetic data the answer that can help bridge the gap of what data is collected and then what data may be missing to avoid that skewed model or data set completely? Elfish, I'm going to come to you on this one. Curious on your thoughts.
Well, I think, we've seen one of the things that you see that people have talked about is biases in AI models. So if you're doing personal, the data that's fed by naturally biases models. So I'm making this up, right? But let's say, for sake of argument, you're white Caucasian, you live in middle class America, and 78% of the model of your data is that, and only 20-30% is everything else. And you're training the models on eating habits, for sake of argument, right, for those people, you're going to get a bias of that kind of stuff. And we've seen that. We've seen the problem of biases in equality, in race, in geography, in a whole bunch of different things. So bias is a problem. I mean, it's the challenge is how do you create an AI model which takes account of that, and that's a hard problem. That is a really hard problem to do. So, fundamentally, the training, the data set you train it with will bias the model in a particular way, as an example around consumers. So I'm pretty sure people like Facebook and Google and all these guys spend humongous amounts of money and time and effort trying to figure out how do they do that. And they've got trillions, they've got humongous amounts of data. So they can actually build and test those models better than anybody else. But even they find it difficult, to try and remove these biases. And I think that those biases will increase in everything. If you're talking about personal data and use of personal data, biases will change stuff. If you're talking about behaviors in systems, for example, aircraft or healthcare, even healthcare, if you imagine training a model to recognize cancer in images, there's a whole bunch of issues around, well, what happens around the training sets and what happens around the bias in the algorithm where you detect cancer when there is none, right? So there's a lot of work to do around taking the data, being able to embed anti-biasing, if you like, into the models. I mean, that's hard work, right? I'm not telling you that's an academic. I'm sure there's a whole academic stream of people out there thinking about that. But exciting times, right? These are the kind of problems that need to get solved to get scaled AI in replacing and improving our lives.
Well, and it's something that we also haven't had to deal with at a scale that we all are today, right? From an enterprise and a consumer level, it's so massive, and also the technology in some cases is still catching up. And to your point, understanding what to do with this data, just because you have data doesn't mean you necessarily know what to do with it, right? They're still figuring out what to do and how can we leverage this data? Because one thing is great, data, awesome. What do you do with it, right? How can you actually make something happen with it? How can you make actionable insights? How can you do predictive models? How can you use this data in some way? Alessandro, I see you shaking your head. I'm going to come to you. What are people missing in terms of this opportunity with data? Because if you're not doing anything with it, what good is it?
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I mean, there's no point having data if you don't do anything with it. I think people are sort of overwhelmed. I don't know what to do with it. I mean, there are some tools available that people can use to try to mine data to figure some things out, but they're in general difficult to use, and they really, they really help unless you have a clear idea of what you want to get out of it, right? And because that's how they're built. But there are very few tools or platforms that actually allow you to sort of navigate data or content or whatever information you have available to you, and come to sort of help you navigate and get to some conclusions that may be non-obvious, right? Because that's really the key. To get an insight, you have to have to reach a conclusion that typically you're trying to prove or disprove your hypothesis, right? You can do that, but sometimes you actually can go a step beyond and reach a conclusion that was not obvious and not predictable and not expected, right? And you find information that you get information out of data that is totally surprising, right? Whether it's positive, negative, whatever, but it affects your thinking. And that's what's really useful. If you can get to that, it's really useful.
And absolutely. And now to the opportunities, because we're all sitting here as investors, we're looking at all sides of this. We also play operating roles. So we play with data and we execute on data and we leverage data to do something. But let's switch sides. From the investor perspective, what are we seeing as areas of opportunities when it comes to data and machine learning? Because right now I feel like there's plenty and there's going to be for the next decade ahead, but where is it today that we should be placing our bets looking at the next decade ahead? And Louis, I'm starting with you on this one. I'm kind of going out of order.
No, that's okay. It's good. We have to shake it up a little bit with the four of us. But there's a lot, as you're right, Kyle, there's a lot of opportunity throughout. The touching on bias and the models is important because in artificial intelligence, when you're creating these models, I don't care what it is. I mean, and I'll just mention one thing in particular, facial recognition. When you're utilizing that, there's a bias there because you have the accuracy. If someone is ethnic, the accuracy becomes much lower, and because they're not making the models for that. They're only starting to do this stuff now. So the companies that are looking at the big picture, and they're looking at how to take this data and make it useful and make it, make it in a way that it can make things more efficient. Okay, so the companies that are thinking outside the box, the entrepreneurs that are sitting there and saying, okay, how can I go and make this better? How can I go and take this and it won't be a bias, a bias situation? How can I go and take this data and not have false positives on this or that, in the medical arena? So I think that, when they start, you have people that are doing this now, they're starting to think that way. It hasn't been really thought about for some time. It's just that everything now and this year, everything's coming to light. So, Facebook and Google and everything was mentioned. I don't even think they were looking at that until it started coming to light now. So I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity there, and hopefully the big boys don't gobble everything up. I'd love to see entrepreneurs flourish and really build something and be disruptive and be leaders, the next leaders, the next wave of leaders in the industry. So that's a long answer to a simple question.
Look, it's a big open field. So I think it's a great answer, and I think also to your point and others as well, is this is not going to be a game dominated by the biggest players. If anything, it's a very open landscape. Right? There's going to be the young companies that figure out how to do one piece of something with data. There's going to be other types of companies that look at things from the perspective of edge and look at an industry perspective. There's going to be so many different opportunities that people are going to be looking at it from that. I think you're spot on. Alessandro, I saw you unmute. I'm going to come to you next on this. Where are the areas of opportunities that we should be focusing on as investors today?
Well, I think I think that it's sort of wide open, and I think the area of robotics is an interesting area. I think because as technologies get more sophisticated, you get more and more functionality out of some of these technologies. I think the biomedical industry and the biomedicine in particular, there is a lot of AI being applied to that. In some cases, it's been applied as a in the drug discovery or in the sort of selection of various things. Cells. It's also in the value chain of drug discovery. There's a lot of AI being employed now. Typically, it's being developed either internally by big pharma companies, or there are companies that do AI as sort of joint venture and with the pharma companies or biotech companies to do specific work for them and with them. And the business model is interesting because some of these companies actually get an upside of the value of the final product of the drug if it works out, right? So lots of interesting business model. It seems in biomedicine, this idea of the JV between the tech company and the pharma company seems to be, I don't want to say common, but employed in many different cases. I think in general, I think that we will see more and more specialized use of AI because basically, because since you're dealing with machine learning and NLP and deep learning and some of these other type of disciplines, you need to train the systems to understand something specific. In biomedicine, for instance, you have to, it's really, people are still using, to do research, are using Google and PubMed or Google Scholar, and they're completely inadequate. Keyword search does not work in this when you're dealing with this amount of information. So the generic tools that people are using all the time are really not sufficient. So you see more and more people that specialize in doing something very specific for a particular type of application, whether it's in biomedicine or something else, because you cannot just use the generic tools anymore.
Absolutely. And Elfish, to you last, what areas of opportunities should people be focusing on around these?
Well, I mean, I'd talk about the business problems. I mean, there's so many, right? There's so many data can solve, and they haven't been solved in the 10 to 12 years that big data, when I started working in big data back in 2009, 10, most problems haven't been solved. I'm dealing with large global Fortune 100s at the moment who are just starting their journey on using data, just as an example, in supply chain logistics. Someone I'm speaking to in a large Fortune 100, I think they are. They're just now thinking about implementing a data platform. So opportunities everywhere. I would flip it around and say, what are the challenges? What I'm seeing is fragmentation. So one of the biggest problems right now is there are thousands and thousands of these AI companies being funded in very little niches, right? And they're all trying to build their own models, and they're all trying to sell their models to a customer. The problem is, well, if you're let's take, I don't know, pick your sector, healthcare, financial services, whatever. They're all building these, hey, I've got this fantastic model and I can solve a particular problem with you with these AI. Well, if you go to any customer and say, I can solve this problem, well, I've got 10 other companies with different models. They're all saying they've got their own models. And how the hell do I integrate this stuff together? I'm not going to build point solutions for each model in my business. I'm not going to do that, because that's just impossible to manage. So fragmentation is really one thing I'm seeing a lot, that growth in, where the focus is on, I can create an AI model on something. So one of the areas we're working in, as an example, right, is computer vision and deep learning in agri. And there are lots of other companies doing exactly the same thing, right? They're all building doing machine learning and deep learning, a bunch of other AI stuff in the agri sector. So, and then you go to a customer and say, hey, Mr. Customer, and you got all of these companies going to this customer, customers are going, hey, I've got these models, can I provide them to you? They go, well, how am I going to do this? I've got all of these people with their different models coming to me saying, you use mine, and they're solving different problems. I'm not saying they're solving the same problem, they're solving different problems. The challenge is, how the hell do I implement this in my business? I cannot implement 10 AI solutions all separately, right? So that's one thing I'm seeing a massive issue about. And so for me, there is a solution, and that's one of the things we're working on. We're focusing on letting people focus on, hey, Mr. AI company, focus on the AI model. You need a core infrastructure to deliver it for. So you have a single data layer that you can embed. So a company can say, I've got a single data layer. You want to implement a model? Stick it on our data platform here. Mm-hmm. And so they've got a single data layer that they can implement it for. And I think that's going to increasingly become a really big problem unless people do something about it. So
that glue, that fabric. I mean, that's who you guys are.
Fabric, but there you go. That's the word.
Coming to you live from the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, but to that point, you're spot on. And this is an issue we see with a lot of technology, right? And we see it as a constant progression as technology continues to shift and change. But from the data layer, you're right. I mean, how do companies do this? How do they do it smoothly? How do they do it cost effectively? This is a huge challenge. Louis, And Alessandro, any other challenges that you may be seeing to Elfish's point? It's a great question. Thank you, Elfish. Lewis, to you first. What other challenges may you be seeing?
I think he's spot on. The fragmented environment is what creates a problem. It brings a lot of confusion. You know, it's not that these companies aren't providing solutions. They have solutions for this, for this, for this. Okay. And if you have a company that needs solutions for all this, they can't go and work with 100 different companies. It becomes overwhelming. You know, they need, you know, to have a path where they can go and bring everything together seamlessly is going to be key, and you're going to have that happening. This is why people in their homes, this is why they like the Amazon and the Google, because you're able to go control certain things, and they allow for connectivity. Where if you have Apple, it's for Apple devices. So, you know, if there is a way, and if the platforms will come that allow people to have the glue that keeps everything together and makes everything work more efficiently, that's going to be the money shot, you know, because you'll have all the other companies creating different platforms, different solutions, looking at the problems, coming up with the solutions. And if they have a conduit to get and organize everything, then it's going to be easier for the enterprise to actually go and implement these solutions to these problems that they're facing. Agriculture is a big one. Okay, there are other, logistics is another one. So you need to defragment that and kind of bring everything together.
Well, we talked a little bit about logistics and supply chain yesterday, right? Here on VCTV, but you're spot on. Alessandro, to you, other additional challenges before we come here to lightning round for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what has been said in terms of the fragmentation of the solutions. Having a lot of point solutions for to solve specific problems is not good enough. You need platforms that can draw everything together in one place and help make sense of the quantity of data that's available. I mean, one of the things we do, for instance, we like to compare ourselves to the Bloomberg terminal, which did this for finance, right? Bringing all the information together in one place. So we're trying to do the sort of the Bloomberg terminal for the life sciences in a way, where we can actually get all the information in one place, but then also beyond that, you know, build specific functional apps on top so that you can actually get to insights. Right?
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to come to the lightning round. It's time to get to closing thoughts, because there is so much more to talk about here. But I think, as in summary, right, there's a ton of opportunities. To Elfish's starting point, there is still challenges, that fabric, that connection point, making it an easy integration. And then what do you do with it, right? Once you have data, what are you actually doing with it in some way? Making sure it's clean, making sure it's actionable, making sure it builds some type of model that is useful, not just for your organization, but also for your customers as well. With all that being said, gentlemen, I want to come to each of you for your closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation, whether that is to look and speak to you as an investor, but also as a partner, as well as we know Elfish is working on this at the fabric layer. I'm dropping that word left and right for you, my friend. But also, Alessandro, I mean, you're working on this at the bio level, and then Lewis, you're working on this at the AI level, and then some as well. So closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you as well? So Elfish, let's kick it off with you.
So yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about strategy and implementation in markets and verticals. You know, some of the other elements I would say, you know, is an open ecosystem and platform play in every sector, in every market around data. That's part of the delivery. So if you're talking about supply chain, you know, bringing together data from a supply chain is really, really hard. How do you do that? So building an open source framework and ecosystem is another part of that strategic opportunity. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just type my name in. You can find me on LATOKEN's channel. I don't know how many I've done. 6. I don't know how many. 7. Too many. You can find me online. I've presented conferences regularly. I've done, God knows, about 4 in the last 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. So yeah, on Twitter I'm at Alpishdoshi, and LinkedIn you can find me. You can find me on Facebook with Alpishdoshi at the end. And where else? Yeah, there you go. I guess that's enough for places to find me.
If you can't find him, reach out to myself. I'll happily connect you. I mean, he's everywhere. And if you see more than one, you're not sure which one it is. If you can't figure it out, still reach out and I'll help you.
It's not the gynecologist.
There you go. But if you can't remember that, I will happily connect you. He is the man when it comes to the fabric of what we're talking about today. Definitely reach out to Alfish, whether that's from an integration standpoint or an investment standpoint. Lewis, to you, where can everyone find you? And then also closing thoughts.
Simple enough. You look online, you put in my name, I'm sure I'll pop up, but you can go to FGA Partners, you can go to megahood.com, see what we're doing and different areas of technology, and see what we're looking at. And look, I think that what people should be really interested in is what lies in the future. Entrepreneurs, I say this all the time, be fearless, think different. Think different, do different, don't follow the leader. Make your own path, look at the problems, come up with the solutions, and keep it simple. You know, you're going to have, and we talked about it a few times, Kyle, with Gary, you know, zettabytes of information are going to be coming and coming and coming. It's going to be crazy. So the ones that are able to go put a chokehold on that and come up with the solutions, these are the ones that will be there in the next 5 years, not just for the next 6 months. So I think that's important. But thank you, and I'll pass the ball back to you.
Thank you, sir. Caught, and now sending it over to you, Alessandro. Closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you online?
Well, I think closing thought is this whole area of data and AI. I think it's the most exciting technology trend that we have in front of us. So it's something that everyone needs to try to understand and get involved in. I think it will drive innovation in practically every industry. And so I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there for people to build value using AI. In terms of finding me, you can either use LinkedIn, and there should be an email address there. You can send me an email through LinkedIn. Although I get a lot of stuff, probably going to my email is probably better. And one of my email addresses is alessandro@epistemic.ai, which is the address that you guys are using on this phone call. And Carl hopefully can relay that if necessary.
Absolutely. And thank you all very much. If you do have any troubles finding our outstanding guests today, our investors, do reach out to the LATOKEN team and or myself, and I would be happy to connect each and every one of you to them, whether that's on social media or, if appropriate and when appropriate, via email as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to make those connections for you. And to each of you investors, thank you guys so much. I know it definitely takes time out of your day to dedicate to us here, and we are very appreciative of that here on VCTV, and couldn't be more thankful for your thoughts and insights. Thank you, Lewis. To your audience, if you like what you heard today, click subscribe, reach down there, give us a thumbs up as well. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today, or as an entrepreneur to get up on our virtual stage, pitch us and the live audience, along with getting feedback on your product, service, or company as well. And with that, this has been another great episode of VCTV. We'll be back here tomorrow and all week talking about different technologies, industries, and regions around the world, how they're being impacted, what's happening, what's not happening, and what you need to know to keep you updated on each and every one of that. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. A big thank you to the LATOKEN team for making VCTV possible every single day. And we'll see you back here tomorrow. You can find me on all social medias at Kyle Ellicott. With that, everyone have a good day.
Great. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody. Cheers. Thank you.